In this video, I'll be discussing the power of neo-spacian connector and what my honest thoughts are on the card and whether it should be put on the ban list or not. Before we get into this, if you guys are new here, my name is BladeYGO, and if you guys want more in-depth discussions on anything Yu-Gi-Oh related like this one, make sure you guys subscribe to my channel and turn on notifications to stay up to date to know when my videos come out. With that, let's get right into this. So before we get into this, we should probably discuss what I'm going to discuss today. And so to roadmap this out, first we're going to discuss why it's good. Why is neo-spacian connector good? And that's for a multitude of reasons, but we'll get to that in a little bit. Next, we need to talk about the potential of connector, what connector was and has been used in. So for example, Warriors, there's Orcus, there's other decks, which I'll discuss in a little bit, but regardless. Then lastly, I'm going to discuss whether neo-spacian connector should actually be hit on the ban list and limited, like I said in the intro. So with that all out of the way, why is neo-spacian connector good? Well, a neo-spacian connector basically is a tour guide for any neo-spacian. And the reason why that's so good is because there's one specific neo-spacian that makes connector insane, and that is Aqua Dolphin. So basically, Aqua Dolphin says discard one card, and if your opponent has a monster in their hand with less attack than a monster on your field, you will destroy the monster in your opponent's hand, and then they take 500 points of damage. So get it already out of the way, it's good in time. But as well, the big thing to note is most hand traps have 0 attack. And the reason why that's so relevant is because, well, Aqua Dolphin has 600 attack and connector has 800 attack. So if you have either of the two monsters on the field, which if you're using Aqua Dolphin effect, you're going to have a monster with more attack than 0 attack. So that means that you can basically destroy any hand trap in your opponent's hand. And why that's so good is because connector basically special summons Aqua Dolphin, and that's 2 free bodies right there. So if your opponent has an Ash Blossom in their hand, they have to use the Ash Blossom on the neo-spacian connector or an effect veiler, etc. Now obviously there are hand traps that get around this, like Skullmeister and Impermanence, which even though Impermanence plays around connector, that doesn't change the fact that no other hand trap can, other than select ones like Skullmeister, but really Skullmeister isn't that good right now, and usually is very situational dependent on the format, plus Ghost Bell is typically a better card, so I digress. So considering Aqua Dolphin does that, this also means that it's just generic hand destruction. So what that means is if your opponent has something like, for example, any monster with lower than 800 attack, or if you have another monster with more than 800 attack, that means that you can destroy just any monster in your opponent's hand in general. And so that doesn't even mean you have to destroy a hand trap, but that could mean that you're destroying something else. So basically your opponent loses a card out of their hand. And considering there's so many good cards to discard, for example, there's Danger, so if you discard a Danger, that'll trigger their effects. There's Orcus to discard, which makes Orcus even better, etc. So considering that, it just means that Aqua Dolphin gives you so much value, especially when you summon it off of connector. Now you're usually going to play Aqua Dolphin as a one-of because you don't typically want to draw Aqua Dolphin and connector because you want to summon Aqua Dolphin from deck with connector. However, at the same time, because Aqua Dolphin is just generically a good card to draw, even just drawing Aqua Dolphin without connector isn't a bad thing at all. Or connector will just summon the Aqua Dolphin from the hand, or connector will just bait out a hand trap from hand like a Veiler or an Ash, so that way you don't have to even special summon it from hand. They're just essentially going -1 with that hand trap. So another reason why connector is good is because you can summon Aqua Dolphin, and both Aqua Dolphin and connector are warrior monsters. And well, you know what that means. You can summon Isolde from your extra deck. And obviously when you go into Isolde, you can summon an Armageddon Knight from your deck, which then leads to even more crazy plays with Summon Sorceress, etc. So just in general, the fact that they are 2 warrior monsters make connector even better. But then additionally, connector just summons 2 bodies, and while it might seem better to go for something like Isolde, not every deck focuses around Isolde. Warrior decks focus around Isolde, but not other decks can. So at that point, it still is 2 free bodies, and that's relevant for some other decks, which I'm going to talk about now, where I talk about the potential of connector. So I've already discussed why neo-spacian connector is a good card, but now let's talk about why you would actually use it, or at least what decks you use it in. So obviously I've already discussed Warriors, and Connector is basically a 1-card Isolde, which means that you go into Isolde, again, you do all of the crazy plays because Isolde gets you so much value. But then because you're baiting out any hand trap whatsoever, that just makes Connector even better, and it makes your Isolde play much safer. Connector also baits out any hand traps for Orcus, because Orcus requires any 2 monsters with different names to pull off combo. And so even though Connector can be used for something like Isolde, because maybe you don't want to focus your entire deck around Isolde, you can also just play Connector to access Nightmare Phoenix / Cerberus in order to access Nightmare Mermaid, and then you discard 1, Nightmare Mermaid will summon an Orcus Nightmare from deck, etc., and then you just go into the combo from there. Now, to be fair, you have to discard 1 card with Aqua Dolphin in order to, well, bait out a hand trap, or force a hand trap, or discard the hand trap in the hand, and then you have to go Nightmare Mermaid, which then requires another discard out of your hand. But with danger monsters, that makes it much less noticeable because of the fact that even though you're discarding a monster or just a card in general, the danger will go +1, giving you more advantage. And then from there, going into a Nightmare Mermaid does require more resources, but at the same time, because you're getting so much value off of the combo, it just doesn't even matter. And even one other thing to note is that because you can discard a card like Danger Jackalope or Tsukinoko, you can link with Aqua Dolphin and the Danger into a Nightmare Mermaid play, and then from there you can also use Connector effect in order to revive the Aqua Dolphin from your graveyard. Now as well, we can also talk about, we've already discussed Orcus, but now we can talk about Danger Thunder Dragon. So it might seem weird to play Connector in Danger Thunder Dragon because, well, I mean, it's not really a 1-card combo Connector in this case. But regardless of that, Connector again is still just 2 free bodies to make something like Saryuja, or just easy link spam in general. And so from there you can go into a Saryuja. Again, Connector helps with hand disruption, etc., making Connector just a very powerful card in general, even if you normal summon it over something like Sky Blaster. Because Connector forces out hand traps, that just makes it really good. And just in general, the fact that you're summoning 2 free bodies, it's just kind of crazy for the future of link summoning. So the fact that you can summon Aqua Dolphin, which will force out hand traps like I've discussed multiple times, means that you will not only have the card out of hand, you will have 2 free bodies for any link summon whatsoever. And as link monsters get more crazy in the future and more generic, that means that you can use Connector for more and more things. Now yes, you can classify a Connector as an enabler for these link strategies in that case, but at the same time, this also is just such a powerful enabler, however, because of the potential hand disruption, that it just makes it so much better. So should Neo-Space Connector get hit? Well, let me talk about some comparisons with Neo-Space Connector that you can make. First off, people want Sky Blaster hit, and obviously Sky Blaster is a different card because it summons multiple tokens instead of something like 1 additional body, even though Sky Blaster can just be 1 additional body at times, but usually you use it for more tokens. But at the same time, you're not only getting an additional body with Connector, but you're as well being able to have the hand disruption, so it's really whatever you value more in that scenario. And so with that in mind, being able to play Sky Blaster and Connector is quite intimidating, and even though Connector doesn't produce that additional body like Sky Blaster does, Connector serves the purpose of being able to do the hand disruption, and because of that, I feel like that can warrant Connector getting hit, along with it just being 2 free bodies. Next, we can also compare it to, in a way, we can compare it to Armageddon Knight and Dark Grepher. You can send a monster like Malicious, for example, get another body, link spam from there, or Grepher does kind of the same thing because it will also Foolish a Dark. Now, I understand it's more generic to Foolish a Dark monster compared to something like special summoning a neo-spacian from your deck, but at the same time, even though the purposes are different and Armageddon Knight can be more crazy, for example, because of the amount of access you have, that doesn't make Connector a bad card at all, and I could compare Connector to Armageddon Knight in terms of starter cards, even though Armageddon Knight is really more of a combo piece rather rather than a starter card now. And then we also have the situation where we can just hit the problem card instead of hitting connector, which yes, that's also another potential thing you can do. The problem being hit instead of connector means that connector won't be used in that strategy. However, the issue is then you can just run connector in other strategies as well. Like again, if Orcus gets hit, for example, that doesn't change the fact that you can run connector in Danger, Thunder Dragon, or something like Warrior, etc. So even though you're hitting the problem, connector can still be a problem in general rather than more specifically in that strategy. So what do I propose? Should it still be free or should it be on the ban list? Well, honestly, I do think we should limit the card to 1. And the reason why is because it reduces the consistency of seeing it. So there is still the ability of playing Rhoda, but that's 2 less copies of connector to play. If you're telling me that you can run 4 copies of connector right now, that's kind of crazy because of how powerful the card is. So I feel like a reduction in consistency of seeing it would make it much better because the consistency of seeing connector is just so much less. Meaning even then, people might not want to play connector because of the fact that you just have other cards you can run instead. Otherwise, if it doesn't get limited, there will still be 4 copies of the card, including a Rhoda. So in that case, I definitely can see connector getting limited, and it may incentivize it not being played at all. Neo-Space Connector is a crazy good card, having no downsides whatsoever for such a powerful use of link spam and potential hand disruption to take away hand traps. It may not get hit, but in general, I feel Neo-Space Connector is a very powerful card and shouldn't be overlooked in the future. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed. If you want to support me further than just watching my YouTube videos, go down into the description and support me on Patreon. It helps out quite immensely. As well, if you guys want to talk to me further than just my YouTube comment section, go down into the description and join my Discord server. Thank you guys so much for watching, and with that, I hope to see you soon.